We know that the measure of an angle that creates a straight line measures 180 degrees. It measures 180 degrees, correct? So if I have a line that measures 180 degrees and it is crossed by another line, then I know that the angles together must add up to 180 degrees, right? What this is saying is if you have a line and you know this is a line, then you know that the whole entire angle that creates it is 180 degrees. And if you know that the whole angle that creates it is 180 degrees, if I was to decide to intersect it by another line, and just maybe start there, I would be able to say that whatever one part is, the other part together with it has to be 180. So if I said to you that this measured 30 degrees, and I asked you what is the measure of angle X, you would say that angle X measures what? So it means that angle X must measure 150 degrees. Now, there's another little symbol that you have to see. That little angle symbol, it looks like a less than symbol that's squished. That means angle. When you're talking about measure, you have to put a little m in front, and that tells you the measure of angle X equals 150 degrees. Great. Similarly, if we had a straight angle as you do here, and 150 degrees was part of it, we know that the other part has to be 30 because X, whatever X is, plus 150 together have to be 180. So I solve like a regular equation and I get that X in this example is 30 degrees. I would like for you guys to try this one. I have two lines that cross, and these two lines that cross, as we said, create four angles. The first angle measures 25 degrees. What is the measure of angle A?
165. 130.
We know the measure of angle A, let's call it A, plus the 25 degrees have to add up to 180 degrees. So here's my one-step equation. When you subtract 25 on both sides, you're going to get 155 degrees. So if the measure of angle A is 155 degrees, what is the measure of angle B? 25, because they are what we call. We know that angle A is across from angle C, and that 25 is across from B. So the measure of angle B is 25 degrees, and together, angle A, which is 155, plus angle B, which is 25, have to give me 180. What is the measure of angle C?
155.
How do you know?
It's 25 minus 180 is 155.
Because together they add up to 180 here or here. Or the third reason is that they are across from each other, and A is 155. They are vertical angles, and so angle C is also 155. So what you guys discovered earlier about angles that are across from each other, that's what we call vertical angles. Vertical angles are angles that share a common vertex and are across from each other. And they are congruent, which means they measure the same amount. Now let's talk about a right angle. You know that a right angle measures 90 degrees. So just like with a straight line, if it's cut, the two angles that are created, or the three angles, or the four angles, or however many angles you have, together have to add up to 90 degrees. So if I asked you to tell me what the measure of angle X is in this example, what would you do?
90 minus 37.
Nice. You know that together it's 90 degrees, and the reason I know it's 90 degrees is because of that box right there. That box tells me I am 90 degrees. So together the two must add up to 90. I do my math and I get X is 53. Okay, now let's do a little bit of algebraic solving. If I asked you to solve for each of these angles, not just for what x was equal to, you would have to look at this and understand that the two parts, and this is the algebraic part that you need to make sure you're paying attention to, the two parts are x, that's this part right here, and x plus 30, which is this part right here. If I know that the blue and the red angles together have to add up to 90 degrees, how would I write that algebraically? You know that the sum of those two little angles equal 90 degrees. So x plus 30 plus x together equal 90 degrees. And if x plus 30 plus x is equal to 90 degrees, as you see up here, now I have a two-step equation. What do I do from here? Yeah, you can combine the like terms, and so you would add x plus x, and you get 2x plus 30 is equal to 90 degrees. And now what do I do after that?
Divide.
Draw a line.
You draw the line, and then after you separate the two sides, you subtract 30. Good. Remember, you use inverse operations. Order of operations when you're solving an equation is inverse. So the first thing you do is get rid of that plus 30 by subtracting. What does that give me?
60. I said that.
On the right-hand side, it says 60. What's on the left?
2x.
2x equals 60. So if 2x equals 60, how do I solve for x?
Divide by 2.
Divide by 2. And I get that x is equal to 30. Does that mean that the measure of the angle altogether is 30? What does this x equals 30 mean? It means that the blue guy here is 30 degrees. And if x is 30, then this here must be 30 plus 30, which is 60. So the two angles are angle x is 30 degrees, and angle x plus 30 is 30 plus 30, which is 60 degrees. So the red angle is 60 degrees, and the blue angle is 30 degrees. And together they add up to 90. The opposite of intersecting lines are lines that never, ever, ever cross.
Parallel.
That is called parallel lines, yes. Parallel lines are lines whose slope, remember y equals mx plus b, the slopes are the same, which means that they're rising and running at the same rate, so they never will cross. However, if the two lines that are parallel to each other are crossed by another line, that line is now called a transversal. And a transversal crossing through a pair of parallel lines creates a total of 8 angles. Sort of like that one line crossed by another makes 4 angles, well, 2 lines crossed by one makes 8. All of these letters that you see here represent angles. So angle A, angle B, C, D, E, F, G, and angle 25. Using some of the things that you have already learned, can you tell me the measure of any of those remaining 7 angles? Okay, so we have a statement that angle A must be 25 degrees. How do you know?
They're different then.
How do you know?
Could you just
Let's look here. Let's zoom into this before we...
E and D are the
Okay.
same as 25.
Tell me, again, how many different types of angles are created? How many different types of angles, not how many angles, but how many different types of angles are created when you cross a line by another?
8.
How many different types? An acute and obtuse angles. Here's an acute angle, that's an obtuse angle. That's obtuse, that's acute. That's obtuse, that's acute. That's obtuse, that's acute.
This is so easy.
So,
All the answers.
if you know,
Equals 90. You do.
we know for a fact that one of those 8 angles measures 25 degrees because it's telling us right here, hey, this is 25 degrees. And so if I know that's 25, who else do I know? What's G going to equal? How do you know it's 155? Because together they're part of the same line. So that means that G has to be 155 degrees.
F is 155.
How do you know F is 155?
E equals 25.
How do you know?
E equals 25.
How do I know F is 155 degrees? It's across from it, from G. What is that called? When you're across from an angle, what is it called?
Parallel.
Vertical. Parallel are the lines. Parallel lines. Vertical is across.
Whoa. Power.
That in reality there are only 2 types of angles that are created, an acute angle and an obtuse angle. The obtuse angle is going to be the remaining part of the 180 degrees. So if G is 155 and F is 155, looking at your picture that you see on your screen, you notice that angle A, which is acute, must be how many degrees?
It has to be under 90 degrees.
25.
25 degrees. Angle B, which is obtuse, measures
155.
155. Angle C, which is obtuse, measures 155. Angle D, which is acute, measures 25. Angle E, which is acute and is also across / vertical from the 25 degrees, is 25 degrees. Angle F, which is the obtuse angle that is adjacent to the 25, next to it, has to be 155. And angle G is also 155. So if we were to look at the relationship between the lines that are created, you would notice that, first of all, an acute and an obtuse angle are created when lines are cut by transversal. You notice that the acute angles are A, D, E, and 25 degrees. So that means that each of the acute angles measure the same amount. And the reason for that is because if this angle is 25, then we know this one has to be 155 because they are supplementary, which means that together they add up to 180. They're on the same line. And if this is 155, then angle E has to be 25 degrees because together these two are on the same line. And because of the relationship between those angles to one another, then we can also make the statement of the following. All vertical angles are congruent, so that would be E and 25, B and C, A and D, F and G. Corresponding angles are congruent, and corresponding means that they are in the same location, but on different lines. So if we were to call this line line L and this one line M, and we were to call the transversal line T, so let's call it line T, then you would be able to say that the angles that correspond to each other are the following. Angle B is above of line L and to the right of the transversal. So looking at line M, above and to the right would be angle F. Angle A is above and to the left. Angle E is also above and to the left. Angle C is below and to the left, as is angle G, below and to the left. And then lastly, you can look at angle D, which is below line L to the right of the transversal, and 25 degrees, which is below and to the right. So those are all congruent and corresponding. The other thing, the other vocab word that you can look at is alternate interior. Alternate interior angles are angles that, when you look at the parallel lines, they are alternating sides of the parallel, or of the transversal, and on the inside. So for example, if I was to draw a little box here, these are the angles that are on the inside, C, D, E, and F. Alternate interior means that they're alternating sides of the transversal. So angle C and angle F are alternate interior, and angle D and angle E are alternate interior. They are congruent. In the same way, alternate exterior angles are on the outside. So if you were to look at the exterior angles, it's all of these here. And alternate means that they're switching sides. So for example, if I looked at angle A and 25 degrees are alternate exterior because they're on the outside and on opposite sides. Angle B and angle G are alternate exterior, and they are also congruent. So angle A is congruent to 25 degrees, and because G is 155, since they are supplementary, then B is also 155. And lastly, the concept of consecutive angles. Consecutive angles are angles that are literally right next to each other. Think of it as making a C. Angle C and angle E are consecutive. They are supplementary. That means if you know that angle E is 25 degrees, then you know that angle C must be 155 degrees. The other set of consecutive angles would be D and F. And again, consecutive angles are supplementary, meaning that together they add up to 180. And it makes sense to look at it and make that observation, because if you look at consecutive angles, such as these, this is obtuse and this one is acute. And the only two combination of angles is 155 and 25, and together they add up to 180. So what you're going to be doing now, as we said in class, is you are going to complete your math space, F 8.3. Please remember that when you are going through the math space, it's going to ask you for reasons. And when it asks you for the reasons, I want you to type in, like, for example, consecutive or corresponding, and then it'll pull up a menu and you'll choose the correct one that says corresponding angles of parallel lines.